Hello, welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Chris, and today I'm looking at the new album by the almighty Venom Prison titled Erebos. So I've been away for a little while, pretty much all of January, actually. Apologise for that. Needed time to recharge, as it were. I'm sure we all need that every now and then, but ready now to get on to 2022. Got lots of stuff planned, plenty of reviews in the pipeline already, and we're starting off with one of my most anticipated releases of the year as a whole. So Venom Prison are, of course, the Welsh death metal band who exploded into popularity after two EPs, and the release of their debut album Animus in 2016, which garnered much attention in the metal world, with the band quickly rising through the ranks of death metal. They became legends of the genre after their second album, Samsara, in 2019. Me and Mike have loved this band since Animus was first released. It was heavy as fuck, it was unrelenting, and Larissa's vocals are second to none. It's also probably the album where you're going to find the most links to what some people would call aspects of hardcore, so to speak. The follow-up album, Samsara, was even better in pretty much every single way you can imagine. It was still heavy and still brutal, yet it felt much more refined, very tight guitar lines that added a lot more dimensions to what was going on. The heavier bits felt heavier, the more epic moments felt even more epic. It's just a perfect follow-up album. So of course, all eyes and ears were on Venom Prison to see what they could conjure up for their follow-up release. I confess I haven't heard Primeval, I think that's how it's pronounced, which contained re-recordings of their earliest work, namely from those first two EPs. I will probably get to it one day. I hear it's still some really, really great stuff, but what I was really waiting for, of course, was the new full-length album. Now signed to Century Media Records, Venom Prison have at last dropped their newest album, Erebos. I was so hyped for this album, I cannot tell you. Every time the band mentioned it, I wanted to get my hands on it. Various accounts on Twitter that were able to hear it before release were lauding it as a masterpiece, already in talks for Album of the Year. So I decided not to listen to too much of the pre-release material. I did catch Pain of Oasis, and believe me, we'll get back to that one later on, but it wasn't something I expected to hear from the band. I needed to hear the rest of it. Is it all going to be like this? Is it going to be a experimental death metal album? But I deliberately avoided the other tracks that were released ahead of the album because I wanted to hear it fresh for the first time. That's generally like how I like to approach albums that I'm really, really, really excited for. I like to hear like the full experience for the first time, all the way through as much as possible. Before we get properly into this new album, can I just say that this is one of the best album covers I've seen in a very, very, very long time. Venom Prison always have great album covers, but this one is particularly awesome. It's haunting, it's creepy, it's terrifying, and I can't stop looking at it. My vinyl order is on the way, so I can proudly display it and scare a load of kids with it, obviously. But yeah, really looking forward to getting my hands on that as well. But anyhow, onto the music itself. So Born of Chaos, which opens the album, is very telling on what you are going to get from this album. Something different that has come before from this band. Instead of the creepy noise-based intro of Animus or the straight to the nitty-gritty of Samsara, we have a low, brooding intro with vocals repeating the title of the album. We also get some of the impeccable guitar work that you'll be hearing across the entire album. I've gone on record saying a number of times how much I think short intro songs for albums are thoroughly, thoroughly overdone. I often just like, can we get to the point already, please? However, here I can kind of justify it. Coming into this after the other two albums, this kind of track is quite useful to kind of subconsciously tell you not to expect exactly what you've heard from this band before, because it's quite a unique opening for them. It also introduces the word Erebos, which features at numerous points throughout the album in various songs. But what I really liked is that there is no song title that directly features the word. Erebos is the recurrent idea across the whole album, not just in one song, which I think is a genius move to make this whole album feel like a complete package. Everything is necessary in this story, if there is one, that they want to tell with the album, just by having the word appear in various different places in the album. Judges of the Underworld showcases this newish sound that the band are trying to do, and I am all here for it. I knew this album would try new things based on what little I had heard in the build-up and what the band were talking about in the build-up, but I certainly didn't expect bits of this album to be catchy. If that's probably not the right word for it. What I mean is that there's, in amongst all the brutal riffing and pained vocals, there are some actual hooks in here. On this track, the recurring phrase "guilty as charged" carries so much weight behind it, mostly just how the vocals are layered. There's clean on top of the harsh stuff, which, is nothing new in general, but it's definitely new for Venom Prison, and they pull it off brilliantly. This will be a brilliant song to open up with live. It'll be so good. When I say there is plenty new here, don't take that to mean that Venom Prison have gone soft or anything like that, or veered away from death metal completely. Nemesis shows that this band can still be brutal as fuck when they want to just go brutal as fuck. The guitar work on Comfort of Complicity is top notch. Some really great lead lines in the second half and leading up to the song's ending. And here's something that really threw me for a loop. It ends on a major line from the guitar. Was not expecting that from a death metal release. It's really clever to put that somewhat more mournful guitar at the end of this track in particular, because that seamlessly leads into, well, it sets your mind up going into the next track, which is, of course, Pain of Oasis. That's the track that follows this one, and it was the only track I'd heard ahead of release, like I said, but man, did it intrigue me when it dropped, as I'm sure it did for a lot of people. The word mournful came into my head a lot when I was listening to this album. The way they use more mournful guitar lines and just sounds and tones amongst the death metal style is something that I thought was done really, really well, and I really, really liked that. It made it feel a bit more emotionally deep than most death metal ends up being. But on this track, however, we take things right down. Clean guitar, a bit of piano, and get this right, lots of clean vocals. So, on top of being an amazing harsh vocalist and guttural vocalist, Larissa can also clean sing it really well. She's just fantastic, one of the best singers in death metal right now. It doesn't stay down there for too long though, not too far in, the harsh vocals come back, but the song likes to peak and drop throughout. It's a really cool journey, this song. I've heard the word death doom used to describe it. That may or may not be the right way to do it. I don't know much about doom metal, I'm not gonna lie. But it's got a lot going on for it, but it doesn't feel like anything's fighting each other. It's a very cohesive way of showing lots of different ideas in one song. This is the only time on the album that we go this somber and this low down. Other parts of the album do drop down here and there, but nothing like on this song here. I can see people calling it out of place for that reason, which I guess is fair enough, but I think it's brilliant. One of the highlights of the album for sure. It's just so epic in how it knows how to peak and trough throughout the whole thing. Slightly controversial opinion, I love the track Golden Apples of Hesperides, I think that's how you pronounce it. That weird electronic noise I think is going to put a lot of people off. They might associate it with the hardcore stuff that Venom Prison might have come from. I've heard Spirit Box be compared to this kind of sound. I like it just because I think it's weird, and it gives great tension and build up to the inevitable bit where it boots off into death metal riffing again. I get why some people don't like that kind of thing. I've grown to actually be quite fond of that, so whatever. And that guitar riff before it properly boots off is so good. It comes back later on as well. I love it so much. It also is another showcase of how infectiously heavy the low chugging is on this album, with impeccable production that really punches you in the gut. I love this track. It's got everything. I'm trying not to talk about every single track on this thing, but my god, this album is good. Let's jump forward a little bit. The melodies, both vocally and instrumentally, on Veil of Night is so good. Probably my favourite bit of melody on the album outside of Pain of Oasis. When they chant Erebos, it just makes me want to see this band right now live so I can experience that kind of atmosphere. Also, the outro guitar is amazing. I love the guitars on this album way too much. One thing as well that this album seriously impressed me on is how well it holds my attention. Now, I love death metal, but sometimes full-on, unrelenting death metal for 50 minutes can get a bit mentally draining at times. However, on this album, even the tracks that go to close to 6 minutes, I'm fully there the whole time. This goes double for the closing track, Technologies of Death. It's 6.5 minutes, which for death metal is quite long, but I love this track so much. Probably my favourite on the album. I love where it goes across its runtime. It just tries so many different things. It starts brutal and fast, then it breaks through a guitar lead line that honestly wouldn't be out of place in a metalcore song. Larissa's layered screams sound demonic and amazing. I love how it grows to feel more epic and huge as it reaches its climax, which, when you consider it all starts out guns blazing, that is seriously good songwriting. It's a closing track that feels like a closing track, which is always something I want on any album. If you can end it epic and it feels like a conclusion, that just is bookends an incredible album to me. Guys, I seriously cannot fault this. I love the vocals so much. Chris Barnes, you're talking absolute shit. Larissa is incredible. Death metal's just moved on from you, mate. Sorry. Yeah, I had to bring him up at some point, didn't I? I love the references to Greek mythology. I love the epic instrumentation. I adore the guitars on this thing. They are so, so good. It takes death metal and adds a few extra layers to make it not only sound heavy, but feel emotionally heavy as well. Not by reinventing the wheel or anything, but by subtle yet purposeful additions to their signature sound. If your standard death metal affair doesn't appeal to you, you either think it's a bit one note or heavy for the sake of heavy, I think this album could be a real showcase for you at seeing just how deep death metal can go when bands are prepared to really put the work in to give it meaning and weight to it. I think the word experimental is going to get thrown around a lot when talking about this album, but I don't think it's experimental. I think it's purposeful. These were well-justified subversions to their sound that weren't just thrown in for the sake of being different. Not that I have a problem with bands that just want to be heavy and brutal and just for the sake of being heavy and brutal. I love those kinds of bands as well. But when a death metal band can keep me completely absorbed and actually feel something, you know that band has done something truly special. This is a band that continues to evolve and get better with every release that they make. Animus was really good. Samsara was great. Erebos isn't great, it's amazing. I have routinely referred to Venom Prison as one of the most exciting bands in UK death metal. Now, with the release of Erebos, I take that back. Venom Prison are one of the most exciting death metal bands, period.